Thanks to the second 5th anniversary player's voice summon, everyone gets 2 Neo Vision select tickets, which can be used to get any 2 Neo Vision units from a certain pool. This is the player's voice. There were 3 possible awards from the voice voting summon. One of them was 4 bundles of 50 fragments that could be used on any given Neo Vision unit from the very same pool. Another was 2 complete Super Trust Mugos and 2 complete Trust Mugos. And the final is the one you see before you. Any 2 given Neo Vision units from a certain pool. Now, personally, I voted for the fragments, since I needed those more than I did units. But if you look at the final count, wow, my opinion was blown out of the water. There were at least 500,000 more votes for 2 Neo Vision units, and I have to respect that. So far be it for me to be a sore loser, let's talk about which units you should get. The list includes all non-limited Neo Vision units released before June 30th. It's currently September, which means F-Mao and anyone before her. So no White Dragon Ling or Avalanche's Tifa, but I'm sure all of you saw the fine print before you voted, right? I'll be considering each Neo Vision unit at EX +1, meaning they at least have their Brave Shift. The reason for this is that Final Fantasy tends to reward units with more compact, solid kits. Except for when they don't, of course. So let's start fresh. First off, choose your favorite unit. You won't like this game as much if you choose someone you don't know, compared to someone you do. Unfortunately, familiarity doesn't exactly translate to viability, so let's proceed to demolish your hopes. Cloud. He's not very strong, especially as he receives a 4 million% morale debuff of Sephiroth's presence. But his Super Trust Master reward is very, very good for single-wielding users, if you're willing to look past his unit entirely. To be fair, he's finally received his EX +2 buffs, making him much better, but that's also contingent on EX +2, which isn't being considered. Rain. He can become a very strong fire buffer if he ever receives the buffs that requires Master Crowns, but at the time of said buff, Japan got a free copy of him anyways. Aerith. She's the only dedicated healer here, and while she doesn't have any resistance buffs, her recovery spells automatically proc on the next turn. Her Brave Shift is a decent light magic damage dealer, but ultimately she begins to fall apart when you try to juggle both rows. You're better off choosing a stronger magic damage dealer or a more accessible healer. Axstar. While he does have relatively low damage, he compensates for it by having his ice buffs overshadowed by Triumphant General Celes. Yoshikiri. He's a great supporter, though only when you need him. He boasts Water and Ice Imbues, Amplification, Imperos, and a Limit Burst that can cure any breaks, stop, and charm, while raising your team's elemental resistance by 85%. Those aren't the only tools he has in store, though everything else is more suited to short-term battles, as you'd prefer a more prolonged support unit for longer fights. Starlight Elena. She's the only hybrid damage dealer here. However, her damage output is literally less than that of her Neo Vision Awakened version, despite supposedly being a canonical upgrade. Thank you, Final Fantasy. So, Shiny Pants, stupid! Gabrin, a superb physical tank that's great because of a solid set of active and passive abilities. He still hasn't received his buffs yet, which would have made him better, but even now he's still practically one of the best physical tanks in the game. Furion. Just like Cloud, he's great not because of his unit, but because of his Super Trust Master reward, which happens to be the best bow in the game. Unfortunately, his Super Trust Master reward is a bow. Shoreline Fina and Daisy, a sturdy magic tank with ridiculous team-wide support, who's still one of the best units even though she's been out since last November. One of her best tools is an automatic passive cover, which can greatly boost her efficiency. Her plethora of support buffs make up for her relative lack of bulk compared to other Neo Vision magic tanks, though depending on the fight, this could be a deal breaker. Madame Adele. She can apply a team-wide Earth and Dark Imbue and Amplification, while supplying Imperos to boot. She also has 300% attack and magic buffs, and can completely fill someone's limit burst gauge twice per battle. Her Super Trust Master reward is also very good for Avalanche's Tifa. Just don't pay too much attention to her damage capability. Physalis, a magic damage dealer with no flaws, except for the fact that she has too much competition. Onion Knight, a good breaker who can lower the enemy's accuracy, but suffers from low damage that isn't helped by a lack of elemental options. Terra, one of the strongest standalone evoke damage dealers on this list, though she is surpassed by Oracle Maiden Lunafreya and faces another competitor in the upcoming Neo Vision Yuna, but they all deal different elemental damage anyways. Locke. He boasts 90% attack and magic breaks, the highest of their kind, alongside the expected 80 to 85% full breaks. With Master Crowns, he also gets 90% defense breaks, but that also requires 4 Master Crowns. And so far, we've only gotten 1. He's still a very good breaker though. Laswell. He can be a physical attacker or a magical attacker, though his personal damage isn't extraordinary enough to justify him over other units. Rain and Fina. The pair can self-chain, which is an incredible asset in and of itself. Not only that, but the pair have a significant set of healing abilities as well, greatly aiding in row compression. Lasso and Reagan. They too can self-chain, and though their damage is much higher, you generally use self-chains to propel a different, stronger unit. They fall behind Rain and Fina due to their relative lack of utility, but it should be noted that the most dangerous enemies are often dragons, which explains their high popularity. Dark Fina and So, a self-chaining magic damage dealer, but their lack of additional utility doesn't do them any favors. Axstar and Cleo, a weaker Laswell and Reagan, but with buffs against humans. They do have a bit more support up their sleeve, but nothing too particularly special. Lightning, she can deal either physical or magical damage depending on her form. Notably, she has a 90% Spirit Break on her Brave Shift's Limit Burst, which can greatly accelerate your team's magical damage output, and a Super Trustmaster reward that pushes your unit's chain modifier cap, effectively multiplying their damage when applicable. She also has a team-wide Lightning Imbue and a nice set of magic spells. Her builds tend to give her some surprisingly good bulk, letting her serve as a provoke tank as well if you wish. Berserker, a straightforward finisher with far too much competition. Snow, a very sturdy physical or magical tank that's very hard to kill once properly set up. A common complaint is he can't do anything else, which, while not necessarily true, isn't exactly wrong either. Ferris. She's a weaker evoke damage dealer than Terra, but is also a strong physical damage dealer with solid 80 to 85% breaks. Though she can surpass Terra in strength with the right team, that argument can continuously evolve as more units are introduced, so we'll leave it at that. She does face the same competition as Terra though. Nalia, a good magical tank that's slandered for being less sturdy than Snow, and less capable than Shoreline Fina and Daisy. She is a good unit, just not the best choice here. Mellow. His Trustmaster reward and Super Trustmaster rewards are strong picks to boost magic and limit burst damage output, which lets him pawn the heavy work off onto someone else, which is kind of true to his character. Noctis, by far the strongest physical damage dealer here, though he is unfortunately severely outclassed by Tifa and Sephiroth, both very popular characters. King Bihini, a decent physical tank whose greatest assets are his support buffs. He's not as sturdy as Snow or Gabrinth, but these support buffs are just too good to ignore. Admittedly, his Brave Shift has a 3-turn cooldown, which can make it tricky to balance all of his different abilities in actual battle, but since each ability has a decent turn duration, it's not really that crippling. Lunafreya. She's the strongest evoke damage dealer on this list, and has the benefits of sheer power like Terra and a fleshed out support team like Ferris. Oddly, she actually prefers to hold the upgraded weapon you get from the Leviathan Chronicle battle rather than her own Super Trustmaster reward. Arden. He's a weaker Noctis, but makes up for it with more elemental flexibility, letting him fit onto more teams than you might think. Zidane. He's a strong damage dealer that can also support your team. His Brave Shift's Limit Burst gets stronger the more you use it, but due to his Brave Shift's restrictions and the Limit Burst's high cost, it's not quite as accessible as you might think. His Super Trustmaster reward is particularly potent, as it lets any unit turn into a supporter that can grant your team a massive 300% stat buff, and a whopping 300% Limit Burst damage buff after 5 turns have passed. Of course, it does require some strategic thinking to really capitalize on it, but it definitely gives a big reward. Cacteria. She's a supporter, breaker, and a magic damage dealer. She can imbue water and earth for your team, and tack on significant Imperos as well. She also has 3 different types of weapon Imperos, though her dagger and sword Imperos pale to her fist Impero. She can also chain with 3 different families, though you're only really likely to use 2 out of 3. Vivi. He can imbue and amplify fire, ice, and lightning for your team, while letting them chain and inflict respective Imperos to boot. His Brave Shift capitalizes on the mechanics of Reflect, letting him deal explosive magic damage. Of course, you need to get that Reflect from somewhere else, but the support is still rather significant by itself. Corral. He's a dark damage dealer and a decent breaker. However, his damage isn't extraordinary, and his breaks are just standard. Diverti. He's a evoke damage dealer and a magic tank. However, juggling both roles is a bit tricky, especially since tanks are pivotal to your team's survival. He's a solid unit by himself, but it doesn't help that he's not the best magic tank, or the best evoke damage dealer. Noppi. She's a physical damage dealer that can also serve as a physical tank. Her true Brave Shift gives her the freedom to switch between rows of ease, though her damage output isn't really extraordinary. However, she does have a support buff that raises the damage modifier of her team's physical attacks, which is certainly unique. Afmao. She's a breaker and a physical tank, tied together with a true Brave Shift. Unfortunately, she's not both at the same time, often leaving the first turn either without mitigation buffs or breaks, which could be disastrous depending on the battle. But once you get past that, you'll find a solid unit of strong earth and fire imperos, alongside a smattering of useful bonus effects. And that's a quick rundown on every unit available. If you're interested in one specific unit, make sure to watch my video review on said unit for more details. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe. Comment below which units you'll be getting, and why. Let's go for top 3 picks, even though you only get 2. There are a lot of superb units here, so you're really going to want to focus on filling out some rows. Will you get 2 different units, or 2 of the same, for the materials to unlock their Brave Shift? Generally, I'd get fragments to further upgrade my units, but with this option, I guess I'll get units I don't have. Except I actually just got Cacteria from the Dark Vision summon, which means I now have everyone here. Except for Onion Knight, but I really don't want him. So if it's for the Brave Shift, I guess I'll get Cobalt Blade Noctis and Vermilion Blade Arden. I'm not in drastic need of either of them, but there is something nice about catching them all. Regardless, you have quite some time before you have to make a decision. At least a month, as of this video's release. So before you make a choice, keep in mind that no matter which unit you select, you'll likely get duplicates of them soon after anyways. See you again in 20 days! Cheers!